Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a nice weekend. Happy Valentine's Day. Today, our main agenda item is we're going to be doing some brainstorming, for story ideas for our assignment 4 stories. So, thinking about how we're going to, what we're going to do with the Department of Health data that we've gotten, or questions related to that data, etc. So at this point, I think you're all sufficiently experienced with, putting ideas out there and giving each other feedback. So why don't we open it up, and if any of you have an idea, you can, throw one or more ideas out there, and then half-baked ideas are fine. And then we'll discuss as a class. One difference for this assignment is that if multiple people are interested in the same idea, that's totally fine. You can work on this, on these stories in groups. So what ideas do you have? Anything you want to throw out there? Yes, Emily.
I can share some ideas.
Sure.
One idea was like looking at more into the lead issue he was mentioning with children, but I would need to explore more of that to I guess understand the problem, I guess, more in depth and how it impacts and what's the cause of it in New Hampshire and Vermont. But that seemed like something
Sure.
interesting. So that was one issue. And then another one, this is more something because it tied to something I'm doing in another class, but I'm doing a project in another class on traumatic brain injuries with DHMC. So I thought that could be interesting to look at data for that and what impacts people having that and higher rates, I guess.
Cool. So I would say of those two, the lead, just based on what the Department of Health folks had told us, it seems like unless there's some sort of kind of systemic cause of traumatic brain injury in the Upper Valley region, it seems like lead might be a place where we could, explore or have impact. Whereas the traumatic brain injury, I'm not sure how much impact we might be able to have, but
I think you're right. Yeah, it's a more broader thing. It would be harder to make an impact on in a smaller scale project. But I was just curious to look at the data while I was, I guess, exploring the other data. I saw something mentioned about it, so it was more I just oh, this is cool. I can look into it more. But I agree.
It certainly sounds like a neat idea. So that might also be something to bookmark for, other projects this term and whatnot. So, what else? So on Friday, a few of you mentioned mental health questions or ideas. Did anyone think more about that? Or Frank? Yes. Sorry, everyone. My internet died. I'm back now. Frank, I completely missed what you said because it died right as you started to talk. So I apologize, but if you could repeat what you said, I'd greatly appreciate it.
What I said mostly is that I would like to know the mental conditions or mental issues for those relatively young groups, for people before college, people in college. Maybe I'll probably focus more on the stress related mental issues, depressions, anxiety, and I'm not sure if that would work because I'm afraid they're probably not. I don't know if there's sufficient data for those, especially for minors, but I'll try to see if I can find them.
Okay, well, yeah, that could be really interesting. I agree that it's going to depend on whether there's sufficient data. So one place to start might be to you know, try to dig around for some data first, and then I guess that'll tell us whether it's a viable path forward. Cool. Anyone else? Yes, Alex.
Whoop, there we go. Yeah, thinking kind of in the direction of dentistry and oral health, because I have personally had some difficulty finding a dentist in the Hanover area. And kind of looking at some of the data sets that were shared by the Department of Health, I wonder if there might be a workable way to combine, well, since I know that oftentimes oral health is associated with heart health, if there might be some way to see if that particular trend is like specifically visible in Vermont or not, or if in particular counties, maybe there's a better correlation there. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. So to look at associations, I think there are a few ways of looking at associations. So first of all, we would need, you know, some metrics for like dentistry or oral hygiene or oral medical issues related stuff. I know that's something that they had mentioned, and so I tried downloading the dentistry data from the dashboard that they had supplied. I was getting an error, but I don't know if that was temporary or not. But we could certainly reach out to them to see if we can track that down.
Yeah.
I was able to download the so heart disease and stroke data. So that could be, you know, a source of that aspect of what you were asking. So one piece is like getting the numbers. And then the second piece is like figuring out what's the appropriate way to correlate or like find associations if they exist. So, you know, I guess you can imagine looking over time. So if two measures correlate over time, maybe they're related. So we won't be able to know the causal direction or whether they're mediated by some other factor, but we could see if they're related. So that could be interesting. And then, and you know, the conclusion could be, this might be worth exploring further. We could also look over space. So by county, for example, we could look at different age groups. Are the age groups that have, you know, oral or dental problems or issues the same as the age groups that have cardio issues?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are a few ways of looking at that. And then another interesting potential thing to look at would be like policy related issues. So Vermont, like, you know, just Vermont's government set up as they were talking, the Department of Health folks were talking about on Friday, like a major distinguisher is like the Vermont government structure, like funds and whatnot devoted to health services, and kind of the approaches to public health are very different in Vermont and New Hampshire, even though like, you know, Hanover is right next to Norwich geographically, and we're very close to White River Junction and whatnot. But so like, you know, presumably like the like climate and natural resources and that sort of thing are similar. And there's, you know, people who work on one side of the river and live on the other side of the river. So even there's overlap in people, but we could look at differences in like, you know, Vermont and New Hampshire that could point to potential like policy or, you know, government like driven differences.
Yeah, that would be a really cool bit to explore.
Cool. Anything else? Yes, Allison, and then Fanri, I can't tell if you're raising your hand or not, but you are. Okay, so maybe Allison and then Fanri. Oh, you're
Okay,
muted.
yes.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Oh, you know what, Allison? It looks like you have you're signed on twice,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you are unmuted in both of them. So maybe if you mute one of them.
I'm not connected to sound on the other. It's all good. It was someone else in the room, but no worries.
Okay.
So yeah, so I was thinking of also looking into lead, and a couple questions I generally had were, so like I was looking at the CDC childhood blood lead surveillance data, and it looks like they have it by state. So I was wondering, should we focus on Vermont, New Hampshire, or both? And like, how do we, like, if they have it by the Upper Valley, then I can just use that. But if it's by state, how should we handle that?
Yeah, so by state would be, it'd be hard to get insights into like the Upper Valley. Oh, we got feedback here at the Upper Valley specifically. But yeah, you could look at like across New England states or something like that, or by, general region of the country, like, New England, Midwest, West, etc. Yeah, so that could be interesting. If we want to get insights specific, like the most actionable insights, I think are going to be specific to the Upper Valley region. And so, like if we want to drive or like affect policy or like have impactful an impact, I think ultimately the people that we're pitching to are going to be in the Upper Valley. And so it's going to be best if it's like if we can say something about the Upper Valley as opposed to just, the United States in general or the world in general. But certainly if the resolution we have is by state, then, we can say something by state. It'd be good if we can also say something by county or region, but, we'll do whatever we can.
So if we were going to go by, okay, so for state is the Upper Valley, New Hampshire, and Vermont, and then for county, what county is the Upper Valley considered, and same with region?
That's a great question. So I think there's like Grafton County on the New Hampshire side. Let's see, we'll have to look it up. Upper Valley counties. Let's see. So, okay, I have a list here of all the towns. I just Googled it, so I don't know if this is accurate, but it looks accurate. Does anyone know this? Is anyone from around here? Or sorry, Emily, yes.
Sorry, that was about, I just had my hand up so I could ask a question after, sorry.
I see. Let's see. I think we're just gonna have to look it up, but like, something we could do is look up the counties for each of these towns, and then, we'll go from there. But
Sorry, Emily. Can we also just email them and ask which towns or areas they care about? If we're just not sure.
sure, yeah. Yep, I'm happy to reach out to them and ask, or you're welcome to also. I think you all have their email addresses. But why don't I just send them a quick quick note, and I think that'll be the easiest.
I have another question.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I have another question.
They might have actually even listed the counties they're interested in on their presentation. So maybe we'll start there, and then you can dig up their slides and, but
Oh, yeah, it says Windsor, Orange, Grafton, Sullivan, Vermont, New Hampshire. So we should go off those.
yeah,
Okay, all right. I had 2 more questions. Second was, how recent does the data need to be?
let's be as recent as we can, but as they told us on Friday, that may not be super recent. So in some cases, it sounded like, they're going back to like 2018. I saw some stuff from like 2015 and even earlier. So like, maybe anywhere from 2 to 10 years out of date, and we'll just have to do our best with whatever we get.
Okay.
So obviously, if there's like stuff specific to the pandemic that we want to conclude, then we're going to need recent data. If it otherwise, if it's pre-pandemic data, we've got a major global like thing going on that's going to mess with all the conclusions we draw. But if we find that different factors are related, I guess it's a nice natural experiment. If you don't have the pandemic, what things are related, and we could be clear about our assumptions and say, we're assuming these will be related under new world circumstances also.
Okay. And then my last question was, how do we handle results that have NA in them?
So there's no universal approach to handling missing data. So data with NA is missing data. So one approach is to just ignore or drop those observations. So, you could, let's say there's some county that's missing a measurement, you could drop that county from the analysis. Another is to, but like that's not always, so that's nice if you have lots of data, because missing one county isn't the end of the world. And then you're not like, you figure one county isn't going to affect the overall results so much. So maybe dropping one county isn't the end of the world. On the other hand, if you've got a lot of missing data, or you have few counties, which I think we're probably in that regime here, for sticking to the Upper Valley region, dropping one county could have a pretty substantial impact. That could be a big proportion of the data set. So then we have to think about like, well, maybe we can't make conclusions for that county about that one measure, but maybe that county has other measures we can include it for, et cetera. Other things we can do are like fill in missing data with the average or with zeros, or forward fill or backfill. So I think we'll have to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. And the key thing is to think about like, what impact does filling in missing data with not missing data have on the analysis? So like, if you have count data and you fill in all the missing numbers with zeros, that's going to drag down your average, but that will be artificial because missing data is missing data. It shouldn't be treated as zero necessarily.
Can I ask a question related to like getting data? I know like you sent that dashboard, like the Healthy Vermont dashboard from 2020, and there was like a lot of like interesting like data points it seemed like would be in there, but I'm having trouble like seeing anything. I can't tell, like it says if nothing comes up, or if it remains blank, then there's no data available, but like every single thing for me is coming up blank. So I don't know if I'm like not using it the right way, or if there's like another place that you can see the data.
Sure. Oh, sounds like there's some sound issue still. Maybe one of you could mute in the class. Oh, there we go. Seems okay now. Yeah, so I posted a bunch of sources in the data sets and ideas Slack channel. So that's one place to look.
I was asking specifically about the earliest one you sent, but like,
Yeah, sure. The
Yeah.
Healthy Vermonters 2020 Data Explorer.
yeah,
Okay. So I also noticed there's a lot of missing data there. I think if there's a specific data set that we're wanting to track down, we can email them and try to get it.
okay,
But I definitely noticed there does seem to be a lot missing.
Okay.
Seems to be a new thing because let's see, it's winter now, so I guess it would be in the fall. When I did like a kind of cursory check over all these data sets, they were all there. So maybe some server setting has changed, or a drive has died or been disconnected. But that's something we could ask the Department of Health folks about.
okay, thank you.
But yeah, we're not going to be able to
Yeah,
analyze data that doesn't exist, obviously.
yeah, I wasn't sure if I just like wasn't approaching it the right way, or like it wasn't there for other people too. That makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely saw a lot of stuff missing. There is some stuff there. So I can pull up the, let's see. So I downloaded the like full data sets and added them to our class GitHub repository in this folder that I just pasted into the Zoom chat. So the 4 data sets that I was able to download were access to health services, arthritis, that's one of them, arthritis and osteoporosis, that's the second one, cancer, that's a third one, and then heart disease and stroke is the 4th one. Aside from that, I wasn't able to get any of the other links to work. So yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes, Bon Marie and then Allison.
I am actually looking at the data for the kind of delayed or missing treatment of other disease during the pandemic. And one problem I have is that I cannot find New Hampshire data. I can only find like national data. And I also have I don't have like the data set like in like perfect Excel or other files, but I kind of have like the data in tables, which I can share screen with you. And I just wonder, because now like the only way I can think for me to process the data in pandas or NumPy would be to make a kind of Excel form by myself by putting the data from their website.
Do you want to share a link to the data set you have, and
yes,
we can check it out? I'm happy to take a look. I think in general, pandas can read in many formats, and if even formats that pandas doesn't support natively, there are often Python packages for supporting new formats. That being said, if it's like a PDF, that there are libraries for reading data from PDFs, but they are not 100% reliable. And so I see, it does look like they are PDFs.
Yes.
So let's see what you have here. Okay, well, so graphs, the first thing you pasted in, those, we definitely won't be able to read those into pandas directly. I see some of the pages there do have tables. The easiest thing there might be to like cut and paste into Excel or Pages or something like that. And then, the formatting might not be perfectly preserved, but you could kind of enter it in relatively quickly by pasting it in. And let's see the other stuff you've got. So there's a like HTML table, it looks like. So that also you could like paste in to Excel. So it seems like with these particular data sets, if you can't get the raw data, you might have to do some manual formatting of the data sets in practice. There are Python libraries for doing, it's called like character recognition. So it's like you input an image, which could be in various formats, including a rendered web page or a JPEG or a PDF, and then out comes formatted data. But the challenge with that is they're just not in practice 100% accurate. So you're going to get some things are going to be messed up. Formatting is not going to be quite right. So the most reliable thing for data sets of the size here, where like it's possible to go through, because you don't have millions of entries, you have like, you know, roughly 100 things total, is just to go through it manually if you want to look at that particular data set.
And for the data, can I just do like the national scale, because it's really hard to narrow down to New Hampshire data?
Yeah, so I think you can, my son is playing with a car next to me. Sorry, I might hear some engine sounds. Sorry, you asked about, do we need New Hampshire specifically or national data? I mean, the more local, the better, and the more specific, but it doesn't, I mean, there are no specific requirements here. You know, we can tell whatever stories we want, but our audience is the Upper Valley Department of Health people. So if we're like, here's this problem in Texas, that might be interesting and important, but there's not much that the like White River Junction office of the Vermont Department of Health is going to be able to do about, you know, some community in Texas, even if it is very important. Allison, did you have your hand raised too? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, so I honestly like forgot my question, but something I realized as I was kind of doing some research online was for lead, it looked like there might be access to some resources, but you may have to email the CDC for it. So if there's any resources, like we're not, like, would it be on us to go email for those resources, or do we contact you first or the Department of Health?
I think if there's one thing that might work is just to like get data quickly would be if you want to send the CDC, if there's like an email address that you have, if you send the CDC an email and then you CC me, sometimes people can be more responsive if there's like a faculty person involved in the conversation. So you could say something like, I'm taking a course, I'd like to analyze this data. Can you send it to me? And then like the instructor is CC'd or something like that.
So it's better for us to email than for you to email?
Probably.
Okay. And then another question I had was, I don't know, like, well, I guess my first question is, when is this assignment due? And like, what's the timeline for it?
So today we're gonna keep brainstorming. I'd like to debug. So on Wednesday, at least, I'd like to do some debugging and like load in some actual data sets. I'm
Okay.
guessing we'll also do that on Friday, but I guess it depends how Wednesday goes. And then we'll have the stories due like one class after we're done with the debugging stuff. So probably a week from today, but possibly on Friday, although I think that timeline might be a little too short.
Okay. And then lastly, my question was like, if we've already, I don't know if like have finished like the topics or once we do, I was wondering maybe if like it's possible to show us how we should start thinking about the data. Like you could pick a topic none of us are working on, like how you'd go about like, oh, this is a good data source, how we could think about playing with it and that kind of thing, just as an example.
Yeah, sure. yeah, I can share my screen and talk a little bit about that. But before we get into that, does anyone else have any other topics you'd like to bring up, or? Okay. So, yeah, so there's a practical side to working with data, which I want to get into. Before we get to that, there's another point that I want to draw your attention to. We visited it on the very first day of class, and we talked about like getting at truth and how can you know truth. So when you start playing around with real world data sets, you're going to see that like the numbers that you want and the observations you want are usually not there. Like people haven't organized the data in the way they want. They haven't asked the questions in the way that you're gonna, like in a way that's perfectly aligned with what you're hoping for. Data sets are gonna be messy. There's gonna be missing data. And so you have to, so I want you to be thinking about that as you're playing around with these data sets. So when you read a study in the New York Times and it's like, X causes Y, or this matters for your health, it comes off as very factual and believable. And the reality is that life and data are super messy. And like the observations that real studies are based on are like the ones that you're going to be working with for this assignment and moving on in the class. And you'll see they are not super satisfying. Like the like data that we typically have just don't come in a convenient way. And so the whole trick is like, how can you take the messy stuff that you have and turn it into something vaguely resembling a like interesting or believable or insightful story, but you're not going to get at truth. And it's just worth thinking about how far removed the conclusions we often take for granted are from the data sets that are used to draw those conclusions. Okay. Emily, did you have a question?
I did, but I figured out the answer. So.
You figured out the answer. Okay. Sure. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay, so here is our course GitHub page. First of all, I've downloaded some of the data sets that the Department of Health shared with us to the assignments for folder under data. So you can get access to some of the spread, like, you know, just in Excel format, you can get access to some of the data a little bit more conveniently here. If you want to download new data sets, often, you know, just from playing around with the data sets that were shared with us, it seems like there's often not like a link you can copy from the website that gives you direct access to the like Excel file or CSV file or whatever. So often what happens is you have to download the data set to your local computer and then upload it somewhere that you can create a link for. And then that linked to stuff is what you have to load in. So you can either upload it to GitHub or you have to host it somewhere else, etc.
And we are all allowed to post data to this folder, right?
So in order to change this GitHub repository, what you have to do is press the fork button, and that creates a copy of the class, like, you know, this whole course materials that you have write access to. And then you change your, you know, your repository as needed. And then let me pull up like my fork of the class repository. It'll look just the same as the class fork, except it'll have your username here instead of context lab. And then once you make all the changes, the way that you get them into the class repository is you click the pull requests tab and then new pull request. And if you've made changes, then you'll see a green button that pops up that says like add your, create pull request, which means add your changes to the class repository. When you do that, that'll send a, notice to me, and it'll show up here. I can show you some of the old ones. Oh yeah, so here's where I added that data. It opens up what's called a pull request, which is like a request to change the class repository. And then I can, do some quality control checks to make sure that, you're not uploading anything dangerous or like adding like passwords or things like that, overwriting materials other people will want, stuff like that. And then once I merge it in, then it becomes part of the class repository.
Is it necessary for us to add our data to the class repository?
Under most circumstances, yes, I would say. The exception would be if it's like a huge data set, then it might be worth putting it on Google Drive or somewhere else. But it's important that everyone be able to access the data. So if it's on some personal, like if it's on just your computer and it's not hosted, in the cloud somewhere, then other people aren't going to be able to use your code or run or replicate your results. So, has to be somewhere.
Oh, just wonder, like, how should we first upload it into our context lab?
Sure. So the first thing you can do is go into the data stories folder. And then this particular assignment is called, what is it called? Oh, I haven't, sorry. To pull, so my repository is actually out of date. So it says this branch is 6 commits behind context lab master, which is the class repository. So my fork is out of date. So to update your fork, you press fetch upstream and then fetch and merge. Okay. Then you go to data stories, and the Vermont Department of Health data is, let's see, somewhere. Oh, VTDOH for Vermont Department of Health. Click that. And then you can click add file and just upload a new file. And that'll create like a, you can choose your file from your computer, etc. Or the other way to add a file is to create a new file, and then you can like type in stuff on your own. So if it's something short, then you can, name your file like data.csv and then just paste in the contents. But usually you'll want to download it to your computer and then upload it. You can also create folders. Great. Something froze there. Okay. That's not feeling happy. Okay. You can also create folders. So if you say like create a new file, you could make like a data folder by typing the folder name and then pressing // and that'll make a new folder for you. So if you wanted to organize it in some way, and then you can just name your file like reuse data.csv or something. But you probably want to call it like lead data or something like that, if to be more specific. And then you paste in whatever you want, and then you press, and then you can like type a message like added a lead data set, and then commit the new file by pressing the green button, and that'll add it to the repository.
So wait, just copy the Excel like table and just paste it here, and that's all right.
Well, an Excel file is not going to copy nicely because it's going to be, you know, it's not going to have the proper formatting and stuff. So for an Excel file, you're going to want to just, you know, you're going to want to use the add a file and then upload files dialog. So you can just like, you know, have them on your computer and drag them to this window here. And then, you know, say added my like new data files and then commit changes. In practice, if you have trouble uploading the data, I mean, the other place to put them, you can add files to Slack, and then I can add them. If you have trouble, you can ask in class if you're having trouble, and we'll go through it. So, you know, there's always little issues that come up, and we'll, you know, solve those on a case-by-case basis if anyone's having trouble. After the first time you do it, you'll get used to it. Okay. So let's go back to that folder. I've added this notebook as like a kind of template for the assignment, and you can open it in Collaboratory. And this notebook is based off of the demo notebook that is in the like demo data stories folder. And it, you know, imports a bunch of libraries that might be useful, and also loads in, oh, looks like I didn't save my changes. Well, it used to load in the Excel files, but I can show you how that works. Apparently I didn't save my changes. Oh, well, the data files are under assignment 4. You can load in this one. Okay. Lovely. All right. Sorry, okay. For some reason, when I share my screen, it doesn't let me copy links correctly. It seems like a weird Zoom glitch. Okay, can you see my screen again? The browser, okay. So let's see, so this is access to health services. And then to read an Excel file, it's read Excel, and then you just paste in the URL. That'll download it. Oh, it's still installing stuff. Oh, almost done, it looks like. Okay, great. Okay, and then we can check out what that looks like. And now we have that spreadsheet, load it in as a data frame. And then we can do this for each, for any other data sets that we have. So I don't think this will work again. Oh, now it is working. Okay, so let's see. So we've got arthritis data. And then we can paste that in. Cancer data. So if you click the, can you see the little menu that pops up here or no? Yes, okay. So you go to right click on download and then copy link address. And then the last data set here is heart disease and stroke. So click that, download, copy link address. There we go. Oh, you have to spell things right. Excel has one L. There we go. Okay, now all the data is there. So, so here's the access to healthcare data set. Yeah, Emily, while I'm typing stuff, you could ask your question.
Can you share the link for this in the chat, please? Just so we can.
It's well, it's
the link for the collab one.
Yeah, let me save this to GitHub, and then you'll all have access to it.
Well, thank you.
My internet's crawling today. Okay. Storytelling with data. There we go. Okay. So let me paste this into the chat. So if you just click the open in collab link, it'll give you that notebook. Okay, so you can see, there's various features and values in each data set. You can look at the cancer one. And then what was the last one? Heart, I think. Okay. Yeah. So it looks like there's like different years here. We might have to ask about what some of these formats are. Like, what does indicator value mean? Does it mean, I see. So the indicator value tells us what it is, and then the indicator column tells us what it is, and then the indicator value tells us what the value of it is. So 88%, so for like this reporting group code, I guess we'll have to figure out, what that means. 88% of adults aged 18 to 64 with health insurance have access to healthcare in this county, something like that. Something else I'm seeing is like, there's no, like we can create a map solely from this because there's no like geography information here, but we do have the county names. And so we could look at another data set. So like the demo data set has a GeoJSON file. So we could load that in. And then if you remember the like Plotly choropleth map plot that we made last time. We can load this thing in. Let's see, GeoJSON file. Okay. And then oh, this is going to be a huge thing, but now we have like the geographic information for different counties. And we know that the states we're interested in are Vermont, so we could filter these by state. So let's see. So counties is a dictionary. The keys are type and features. So county of features. Oops. Okay, so got all this stuff. So we could say like Vermont counties is maybe you know, the entries if C of their state is Vermont. That doesn't work. Oh, maybe they don't all have states. Interesting. So state in C.keys, and let's see, there we go. And then Vermont counties is great. There are none. I did see New York, so let's see if, nope, must have done this wrong. Counties of features. That's going to be a list, I think. Yep. And then each of these is type. So each feature is a dictionary. I thought one of these was states. Oh, it's properties. C of properties of state. Okay. There we go. Okay. So these are all the Vermont counties, I guess. There we go. So we could use that for something. And this has like the, I guess this particular file looks like it just has the points. So it would just have like maybe the geographic center. So we might have to use another file that we dig up to get the like outline of the counties if we wanted to make a map like that. But we could do like a geographic scatter plot or something with just the center coordinates. Anyways, my point here is we can combine across different data sets. So we know the county names, the geography information may not be available solely from the county names, but we can look up in other data sets, like the geographic coordinates of different counties and whatnot, and kind of stitch across data sets. Okay. Have I thoroughly confused you all? How can I, What questions do you have? Yes, I have. Great. Okay.
I guess, sorry, I guess question I have is, how do we know like which type of graphs to make? Like what made you decide to do the graph, like I guess a map, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to think about, we're gonna have to match the graphs to questions. So there's not one type of plot that's gonna work for all cases. If we're looking at trends over time, maybe a line plot where the x-axis is time and the y-axis is like the value of the thing we're measuring. Maybe that might be most appropriate. If we want to highlight geographic, properties, maybe a map would be good. We could make an animated map where we have the shading of the map changing over time according to some, we could have time represent literal time, or we could have, different demographics changing over time, like as people age, how does the shading change? We could look at bar graphs comparing one county to another county, one type of government to another type of government, one policy to another policy, etc. So all the types of graphs that we went over in the like data visualization ideas lecture, those are all fair game. And also, if you just imagine, how would I want to plot this? We could try to make that thing in Python. So it's a tricky question because there's no right answer, and there are like infinitely many ways to visualize things. But it's also flexible in that, anything is possible. So if you imagine something, we can probably turn it into code.
Okay. And then I guess another question I have is like, for some of these different issues, there's a lot of confounding factors. How do we account for those in the graphs?
Yeah, again, not one answer here. How do you account for confounding factors? Like, I mean, we could, if you've taken like a stats course, you've got some training in accounting for confounding factors, but in general, yeah, there's no like one right way. I think we're gonna have to take that case on a case-by-case basis too. The challenge with real data is often that's different from a typical stats course, is like we may not have or be able even to estimate even roughly the like factors. We may not be able to separate out the factors that we want to account for. We may just have the aggregate measures in a way that just like confounds everything. So sometimes we may just not be able to factor out the things that we might want to factor out.
So for now, I guess you saying not to worry about it?
Let's first worry about getting something. And then after that, we can worry about whether it's like correct and how much we can trust the conclusions.
Okay.
So like making a plot is better than making no plot. And then once we have a plot, we can turn it into the right plot.
Okay.
Similarly, getting some numbers is better than having no numbers. And once we have some numbers, we can, correct them, clean them up, talk about how to interpret them, that sort of thing. So we're at the end of today's lecture. So what I'd like you to do for Wednesday is start digging up actual data sets. So take the questions that or the topics that you're thinking about, and let's try to download some actual data. So try to track down some files using the sources that are linked to in Slack. You can Google to find new sources. If you'd like me to check in with the Vermont Department of Health people about specific data sets that are not downloading correctly on the dashboard, I'm happy to do that. Just post in Slack and I'll send a request. And then, if you want to email the CDC, you can do that. You can CC me to increase the odds of getting a response. And we'll go from there. And then I'm hoping on Wednesday, we can start loading in some of your data sets and creating some graphs and starting to dig into them. But to do that, we'll need data. So that's your job for Wednesday. All right, and post questions, problems, issues, whatever in the data sets and ideas channel. And I'm happy to help out tracking things down or figuring out how to read in some format if you want to, get started before Wednesday. All right, take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the day, and see you on Wednesday.